27, 2018 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council. Would you please take the roll?
Rousey.
Here.
Pack.
Here.
Palmieri.
Here.
Allison Osby.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Pansky.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Present 7.
Would everyone please stand while Councilmember Krause does the invocation, and then we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance.
We ask for guidance tonight as we begin this meeting. May all those who participate in our discussions and our decisions reflect the values that we cherish in this great city.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ask the student who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance to stand for a second. Appreciation for you. Couple of questions. Anywhere you go to school, favorite subject? Summer's almost here because all sorts of birds migrate. Under the summer.
My name is Owen Moy, and I go to Gracie School in 8th grade. And my favorite subject is how to do science.
Okay, great. Here's the certificate for you. Now you can watch the council meeting or go home and study. Starting off tonight, we have a couple of presentations. The first is Guns and Hoses. Councilman Peck, would you please introduce Tony Olson?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Oshkosh firefighter Tony Olson. Tony has taken over the organization of the Guns and Hoses charity hockey game from Brett Hamer. We're in great hands with Tony. Brett did a great job. Tony, you got a big event to fill. So Tony's going to talk about the Guns and Hoses game, which is scheduled for the 10th of March.
Hi, my name is Tony. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. A little bit about our event coming up. It's a local firefighters versus local police officers. And basically it's a charity hockey game where all proceeds will go to a charity of choice each year. This year we have chosen Project Home. Is a new event that has been developed this year. They basically go around to lower income housing and help redo and renovate their houses to basically make it a sustainable, livable house. Each year we pretty much pack the ice arena. It's the biggest event in the whole rink. So throughout the year, it's a pretty good game. Some heated battles. Starting here as one of the players, so it's pretty butting head, and it's a good time. It's a great family event. We do it to give away pucks. Admission is $5 for adults, and children 5 and under are free. You could buy T-shirts. There's a lot of great raffle prizes out there too, and that's about it.
Yep.
You guys all
Thank you, Tony. Would I be correct in saying that Councilmember Peck is one of the
I'm one of the three blind mice this year. Yeah.
Okay, thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And the council
Yeah.
will be dropping the.
We're gonna try and keep things moving this year. We'd like the council to attend, but we're gonna have the stripes drop the pucks. So, but yeah, please come out, and it's a great event, and it's for a great cause. And I really appreciate our firefighters and our police officers stepping up and supporting the community.
It's a great event. I've gone for quite a few years. So. Next we have Mr. Roloff would like to introduce some people and talk about a citizen survey and the use of POCO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to present a couple of individuals who are going to be speaking tonight. First is Professor Samantha Larson. She replaced Professor Nolenberger, and she's doing the citizen survey this year. Based on the input that the council had given us, we've talked to Professor Larson about some changes to make to widen the breadth by which we get input from the public. Professor Larson is going to talk about that. And then Nick Mastronardi and Pat Cannon from Palco are here to talk about how their role working with Professor Larson on the citizen survey for this year, as well as just the service that Paulco provides. We've already used them a little bit already, and to talk about different ideas that we have to use the Paulco tool to improve citizen engagement. But first I want to start with Professor Larson because about this year's citizen survey.
Great, thanks, Mark. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for inviting us to come in and speak to you all today. I'm a new assistant professor in the Department of Public Administration at UW Oshkosh, just moved here in August from Denver, Colorado, and so I'm really excited at the opportunity to really hit the ground running with the city. I worked with the city of Lakewood there for about 4 years on a citizen advisory board, so it's good to be back in some chambers and excited to meet all of you and just tell you a bit about what we're doing this year, a bit different from previous years with the survey. And so to give some background, I know most of you probably have an understanding of the survey, but the city's actually partnered with our department since 2009. So this is the 10th year that we've been doing the survey. It was previously led by Carl Nolenberger in his policy analysis class, and Carl has actually since retired. I think he's enjoying his time right now in Mexico, and so I'm here to kind of take over in his space and lead the survey this year in that class as well. So in August, when I first got to Oshkosh, Mark and John Fitzpatrick, assistant city manager, invited me to come in and talk a bit about kind of the history of the survey and then concerns that council had for maybe ways that we could improve the survey moving forward. So I really think that this year the classes started just this spring, and I really think this year is an ideal time to really kind of think about what we've taken from the survey in years past and then ways that we can do two things that you all kind of asked of the survey and of the class. One is to kind of improve our response rate, so to improve the survey so we can get more input from more citizens. And then in addition to that, reach out and get more of the voices from kind of historically underrepresented communities in the city of Oshkosh. So I just want to focus on kind of two main things that we've done this year with input from the city to improve this. So one is kind of these survey design changes. And this is kind of the nuts and bolts stuff. So we reduced the survey length. In years past, I think that the survey that was mailed out was something like 6 pages. This year, it's about 3. So we kind of took out some of the questions that really weren't providing anything quite relevant or necessarily meaningful. And that kind of reduces the time burden for residents that are filling it out. Second part is we kind of reorganize the questions just to help the survey flow in a more welcoming and better way. So we start off with kind of these larger quality of life questions, asking people what how they would rate their quality of life, and then digging more into what they think of city services, and then ending with kind of some open-ended questions that are more topical for this year. And then finally, as you'll see in this next slide, to some extent, we kind of redesigned the format. So on the left-hand side, we have the survey from 2017, just the first page. And then in 2018, basically what we've done is kind of created more white space, made it a bit more easier on the eyes to some extent. And I know that this is small, but it just gives you a sense of how we've kind of reorganized to hopefully make this something that people are more inclined to complete this year in terms of the mailing. So the other big change this year is kind of creating more data collection strategies. So similar to years past, we mailed out the survey just last week to 1,500 randomly selected folks in the city. And so we'll continue to do that this year kind of as a comparison point. But in addition to that, what we've added are field surveys. So just over the weekend, students in the policy analysis class went out into the community and tried to actually kind of poll more residents in specific locations. So some folks went to the library. We had a student riding the bus, other folks walking around downtown, just trying to go out and kind of reach, again, more voices from folks that haven't historically participated. And then the other kind of partnership that's really helping us conduct greater outreach to more folks is the Polco partnership. And I'll let them kind of speak to the services that they're providing, but one thing that we're really excited about is that by sending the survey out through this kind of online mechanism, the opportunity to track who's participating in this is available in real time. So We know, say, if there's residents who, are responding, say, from an older age demographic, we can try to reconduct outreach to folks from a younger age demographic to make sure that the respondents are as representative of the city as possible. I'll just leave you with this. One thing that we want to do this year within my department is compare these different methods. So the traditional mailing method, the field survey method, and then also the collection from Polko to see really in future years what the best method would be for the city in terms of efficiency and engaging more diverse residents, and then essentially just providing outreach in a way that's meaningful to all of you moving forward. So I'll answer questions after Polko and just hand it over to Nick at this point.
I'm Nick, and this is Pat, and we're part of Team Polko, founding member. The quick story behind Polko is after 11 years in the Air Force, I really liked the public sector, knew the importance policy has on people's lives, but I also realized that there was a growing disconnect between people and what was going on. So a little time at Amazon, but then I dedicated to working at the intersection, trying to build a platform to help people better connect. So Polko is a civic communication platform. And the goal is to make it easier for more people to engage and learn about questions and surveys being asked of their city or their county. I met with Pat, and he helped us really hone the platform and improve our outreach. And so with that overview, we'll give just a couple views and answer a couple questions on the mechanics and how things look and work. The goal, almost there's so many cities using SurveyMonkey, or your other option had been doing expensive analog door-to-door or telephone. And our goal is to deliver something online that's more accessible, but still it's verifiable and trustworthy. So the goal of Polko is, by providing this venue, we want to increase the number of participants who can learn about and participate on the questions being asked of their city. Not just more numbers, each question can have a background details page, so we can help inform respondents. We want not just more, but also better informed. Real time, since it's online, you can monitor who's participating and who's not by name, but we provide some breakdowns by age ranges, by gender, by parts of the city, so you can help ensure real time that who's weighing in is better balanced and more representative. And the data, we do some cross-reference against voter registration database or other verification lists, so that it's not the same person 10 times, or that this isn't somebody from outside the district, if that's relevant, outside the city on a question. We think it's good. It helps build a stronger community, improve communications. I have 2 young kids. I can't always make it to a city council meeting. I know they're important. This is a way for me to learn what's going on and participate. And then also, a lot of city staff spend their time monitoring Facebook or Twitter or email, and this is a way for them to talk to each of those audiences, refer them to one place. And so the last goal of us, of working with Polko, is to ultimately save staff time and resources. So we know the status quo, and I'll just put up a funny picture, but this picture kind of represents, by providing an online platform, what we hope to solve.
I spent over 30 years in local government as a city administrator, and each one of those is pretty obvious what we face at different times. We put this slide together, and really what we felt was Polko overcomes each one of these. The ability to not have your staff overwhelmed, like in the lower bottom corner, or have somebody hack the system and just continually add to the answers without any verification. And then you always have the vocal few who show up to your council meeting. I've been to many council meetings on Tuesday nights, and obviously you got a great crowd. If we had more than 3 people, it was amazing. We were spent more on the right side than the left side. So that's when Polko, I first met with them, I was really interested and just fascinated by the whole concept of being able to reach out to your citizens in a good, civil manner and be able to get that information back to you and be able to work with that information. We were able to use this in an economic development study that I did, and one of the key factors that really came back to me was a local businessman said, I now have the opportunity to be able to answer questions without any fear of retaliation to my business, because if I answer this question one way and you're opposed to it, I risk that you won't come back and shop at my store anymore. And he was very thankful. He was a small independent pharmacist in downtown, and he said, I can't afford to lose customers. And so that's why I think Polko is a great tool to reaching out to your residents.
Just to share how it looks, the Polko process for the community is basically a three-step process. The contrast is tough to see, but on the top left is we make it really easy. It's almost like a Google form or a SurveyMonkey to pose a question. What we don't show here is that question. If you click read more, it helps to inform everybody on some of the background materials. And then that question can be shared through multiple online platforms. You can send it through email, through social media. You could embed on the city page or with other local online publications. And regardless of where you encounter people or they find out and find this e-ballot, all the responses come back to the central database where we cross-reference against the voter file or other verification lists. And we never share anybody's individual level data. We've taken a commitment SurveyMonkey, and other companies do, but we verify and then only show the aggregated de-identified responses. So people's privacy is preserved, and that's our prime commitment. We understand that the whole process doesn't work unless we're true to that. And so on the very right, what you'll see is that was kind of some of the reports that we provide then on issues to municipal officials. The top would be, here's the sentiment, participation and sentiment by all respondents. The second is, here's the participation and sentiment by those who were able to, when we cross-referenced, verify as verified residents of the community. And we generally are able to do that with 60 to 70% of the respondents. So which one to use probably depends on the question. Maybe there's a lot of people moving in or driving in for work, and in that case, they might not be people who live here, and you'd look at the top level. But we provide all sets of results, so anybody can participate and respond. We do some of these results by age ranges and by demographics and by district. So real time, it's great to know who's participating, but it's also really good to know who you're missing. So you can real time work, as Sam was saying, to work with the relatively underrepresented members of the community to make sure that the voice that you get is as representative as possible. With that said, just relative to others, we try to deliver the ease and accessibility of online with the verification, citability, and trustworthiness of the more expensive traditional door-to-door approaches. Here's just an example. So here you can see the question on the left-hand side. This was a town in Purcellville, Virginia. Put a question about, should we have a stop sign here? They can put up a map and show prospective respondents where this was, some background materials. Here's the results again. And then the last thing that we do is we try to foster a civil and constructive environment. Is respondents can also provide a comment, only one comment, and those comments are organized by the position that they voted. And they can pose their comment as anonymous, but really it's different than anonymous because you can trust that it's a verified resident of the community. And so then there's this structure, this little bit of structural adaptation really cuts down on the mudslinging, the trolling, the vitriol, and helps somebody new to an issue not only see the official background material, but then also get some crowdsourced input and learn more about the issue. So with all the, we were fortunate to recently featured as the future of civic engagement by the National League of Cities. We're a Wisconsin-based company. We won the Wisconsin Innovation Awards and the Governor's Business Plan competition, where we're just really fortunate for this. And now to start getting national accolades for just us focusing on what we think is fostering a healthier, more constructive environment is really rewarding to us. But in a nutshell, hopefully that was informative. It's a new type of tool. We really try to make it be rewarding for both sides at the same time, and by doing that mutual benefit, we hope it really is helpful for the city of Oshkosh. So.
If you're through, I'll open it up to questions from the council. Deputy Mayor Herman.
Yeah, just randomly, let's just say for, like tonight, we have a public hearing on a street project. If we just want to focus on that street project, can we narrow it down to like the neighborhood that's affected by that street project? I mean, it only goes to how many people are registered, obviously, but a lot of times I know we have our public meetings and staff is there and none of the citizens come until they get their bill. Yeah. Now they're all upset. Yeah. So my thinking is on some of these projects, when we want to, maybe widen the street or narrow a street or do something totally different, can we somehow flood that neighborhood in a sense, I guess you could say, and get some really good input? from them.
Yeah, I mean, our number one goal is to improve the accessibility so people can see the questions and the relevant materials to make an informed decision. Our default way of operation is when you post a question, anybody can respond, and then we provide the officials on the back end, here's all respondents, and here's the folks from the city, and we can even do by precinct, zone, and ward. But if there is a particular question you want to restrict the visibility to people just in a particular area, we have the opportunity to restrict the visibility on questions.
Okay. That's a good tool to maybe have down the line.
While Nick was making his presentation, I pulled up the Palco app. Palco.us, if you have we have really good Wi-Fi in here. You can load the app right now. But already we've had 98 responses to our citizen survey. It was just put up on Friday. So you can see that once the subscribers sign up, you can start to get some responses. Last year we got about, Sam, do you know from your data how many folks responded to the mail-in survey last year? 257. So, I'm hoping by the end of next week we'll surpass that just on the Palco version itself, and in addition to what Sam can pull in from the other mail-in surveys as well.
And of those 250-some surveys, it was fairly skewed, wasn't it? I mean, demographically, it was.
And that's where
Not a
Professor
good-
Larson
not a
and
good
her class, they're going to do what they can to generate more participation.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I think that's one thing that the class that we've discussed, and specifically we're trying to, partner, I think, to some extent to make sure that we, again, create a representative sample of folks, because it was, largely folks living north Oshkosh, married, older, owned homes. So it's, very few people of color filled out the survey. So we're really hoping to kind of change that this year. And I definitely think from everything that's happened so far, it's been just 1 week. We're excited to see that change already.
One last thing to note on the use of Polko, I think asking questions or providing content to engage with the community frequently ends up building a great culture and kind of this practice. One of the design features on Polko is it's kind of, you build a followership. So anybody who'd ever responded to a previous question, whenever a new question is posted, will receive a no more than once a week email just letting them know that there's been a new question asked of them by their city officials. And so that means that you have this followership that continues to grow and continues to build a stronger, better connected community. So just for keeping in mind, frequency helps.
Councilperson Pansky.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question for Professor Larson regarding the field surveys. Specifically, are you going to keep, and maybe it's just me, but where you took those surveys, are you going to keep that so that we know where that was taken, and kind of how did you reach that point? I love the idea of you guys going out into the community. I think it's great for your students, but also the community members. But did you have expectations on the feedback you were going to get, and will you do it again?
Well, and I think that we'll evaluate that once we review the results. So students went out and selected locations kind of based on the skewed results from last year. So a number of kind of public spaces is where we focused this year. They got 62 total folks to fill it out over the weekend.
And just over this past weekend?
Yep, over the weekend. Okay. And then we're going to continue. Mena Gardu is a research assistant that's helping out with the survey this year, and she's actually looking at continuing that as well. She's helping with the analysis this year as well. So we'll definitely, kind of in our final report, I am also envisioning that that's going to look quite different from previous years, so I want to spell out specifically what we're doing differently and make sure that we are able to kind of document the lessons learned from that and, be able to share that with all of you as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Palmieri.
Just a follow-up, Dr. Larson. Did you say earlier that depending upon the outcome of how those 3 different approaches or distribution of the surveys go, you may end up recommending only one in future years?
To some extent.
How would that affect like the digital divide though, and perhaps age groups?
Yeah, right. And I think that that's what we'll speak to. That's what going into this, I don't want to make any assumptions about what the results will look like, but I think that when we look at the difference between the respondents, we'll be mindful of basically, where those differences lie. And I think that in addition to that, from the perspective of engaging our class, one thing that we definitely want to do is think about how to, in addition to helping them understand survey methodology and collecting surveys, figuring out how to get input from the most diverse group of folks possible. So it's a learning opportunity for them to see what method works best in that regard, and then also being able to utilize that to, again, kind of put forward different recommendations to the city as well. Does that make sense?
I'm real glad to see the expansion and further breadth of approach on this.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, on that topic, I can, usually when we launch with a city, just a shout out to, we're in 40 cities now in 8 states, and so we're relatively young, but we're really excited about the growth, and I think Oshkosh has been very forward-leaning and trying new ways to do civic engagement. So just a shout out to the team and willing to adopt, try new ways to engage with the community. As far as the representatives, everybody's always afraid that it's predominantly younger who use the platform, and we always see amazing use out of the gates from 50 and 60-year-olds, and even 70s, 80s. We just recently had our first 90-year-old vote on Polko, but there's this unfortunate precedent that like 30-year-olds and younger and 20s traditionally do not engage, and it generally takes a little bit of work. We get more than otherwise wouldn't show up, but they're still relatively underrepresented usually. Than higher. So we provide this platform, but it still at the same time needs some work to kind of disseminate out to the community. So just doing little things like our On the Chair tonight, letting anybody know that there's questions always helps, and the more people that come in, the easier it is to get broad representation and useful results.
If there are no further questions, thank you. We look forward to the results.
Yeah.
Polka will also be here at State of the City. Our goal is to get everybody in the room with a cell phone to sign up. We're not going to give up. I told Nick our goal is really, I think he thought if we got 1,000 subscribers, it would be good. We're already well over 1,000 subscribers, and our goal is to really get to 2,000. And that will make these subsequent surveys very scientifically valid, and that's really what we want to do. And of course, it's citizen engagement, which is a good thing to get as well. So thanks to everybody, and you'll see more of these guys in the next month.
Next, we have a public hearing. It'll require 3 readings, and then we will vote. It is Resolution 18-87. Approve final resolution for special assessments, contract number 18-05, paving, sidewalk, driveway, and utilities, second local street concrete paving program, Oregon Street, Fox River to West 16th Avenue. Second reading, Resolution 18-87. Approve final resolution for special assessments, contract number 18-05, paving, sidewalk, driveway, and utilities, second local street concrete paving program, Oregon Street, Fox River to West 16th Avenue. Third and final reading, Resolution 18-87, approve final resolution for special assessments, contract number 18-05, paving, sidewalk, driveway, and utilities, second local street concrete paving program, Oregon Street, Fox River to West 16th Avenue. Pam, has anyone registered to speak to this resolution?
No one is registered.
I will bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I see no one wishing to speak. Would you please take the roll?
Krause,
Aye.
Heff,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Ellison Osby. Aye. Herman,
Aye.
Pansky,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next, we have citizen statements to council. This is the first of 2 opportunities the citizens have to address us. Citizens are to address the council only. Statements are limited to 5 minutes. Must address items that are not listed in the council meeting agenda, are limited to issues that have an impact on the city of Oshkosh, and the common council may address at a future meeting, and must not include endorsements of any candidates or other electioneering. Pam, has anyone registered to speak?
Yes, we have several. Chang Mua is our first one, and the next one would be Ashlyn Miller. So Chang, if you would come up to this podium.
Good evening. Mayor Steve Cover and all the city council members. My name is Chang Mua. I am the new elected president for the Hmong Service Center in Oshkosh. On behalf of the Hmong Service Center, I'm here to thank for your response about the response concern regarding the two events that's coming on May and September 2018. Will be at Winnebago County Park. I understand that the two events has been approved by the city council members for the Hmong Service Center Inc. under former President Mi Yang. Late last year, however, her term came to be end on December 31st, 2017. But she refused to hold an election for, and then the community, instead she held a secret election for her family and relatives to be elected to elect her for the third term. It's a violation of the Hmong Service Center by law, and the order approved party settlement and dismissal of case number 14CV10, class 430701, between B. Freedom Lee and Mi Yang on December 18, 2015. Under the Commissioner of Circuit Court, Judge Barbara Park Key. After Mi Yang announced that she has been reelected for a third term, all the Hmong residents in Winnebago County voiced their concern about the Hmong Service Center Inc. So they had no choice, but they hold a property election on December 16, 2017, with the Hmong Service Center resident at the Club 52, 1014 Ohio Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I was then elected as the new president of the Hmong Service Center Inc., as well paying Yang to be treasurer from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020. Thank you very much for your time and looking forward to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
Ashlyn Miller.
Hello, my name is Ashlyn Miller. You may recognize my name. I believe I emailed all of you a few weeks ago regarding the 70 acres of land that were recently available after the purchase. Excuse me, I'm not very good at public speaking. Recently available after a portion of the purchased land for the golf course at Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course. And I'm here to propose that beyond the recommendation for having the community garden, that it not only be a community garden, a community park, but it be a community garden, which would include pesticide-free and chemical-free produce, flowers, just essentially a chemical-free area for people to walk amongst nature, plant food or plants in individual plots, perhaps incorporate extreme weather greenhouses, the list goes on. There's a lot of potential for making it that sort of environment beyond just a general community park like we have on County Road Y. And I think it would be a huge benefit to the community to give that as a potential option or addition to the proposals that are out there, including that park as well as the golf course. I just thought I'd bring that to the attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, has anyone else signed up?
Karen Hartley. Mayor, I have no further individuals registered.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda items. Those are items of routine administrative nature that are voted on by the council in a single roll call vote. Staff recommends approval of all items. Any member of the public or common council may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. Pam, has anyone registered to speak to any of the items?
Yes, item number 5, which is Resolution 1889, David Landwehr.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. As you stated, my name is David Landwehr. I reside in the De Pere area, but I work. My day job is I work for a plastics company, a plastic pipe company. I think I come to this with a little bit of a unique perspective because my other job is I'm a member of the Brown County Board of Supervisors. So I also get the phone calls and all the fun and the things, just as all of you do. The reason I wanted to come tonight and address regarding this project and such is so often you hear about, you get the complaints. You get the, everybody loves to complain when there's a problem. Nobody likes to pat anyone on the back or such. I want to say that I've worked with your Public Works Department, your Engineering Department for many years. I've been doing this now for going on 24 years. I got to say you have a very class act of a department. They're progressive. They're also, they base a lot of their opinions and their research and their decisions on good, sound engineering logic. Coming from where I sit on both sides of this, where I work with a lot of public works departments and engineers, alongside also overseeing a department and such in Brown County as a member of the supervisors, we as elected officials a lot of times look to our our employees, our staff, our engineers especially and such, and think, okay, we the elected ones are not the experts in these things. We allow and expect those that have the degrees and the continuing education to be the ones who are keeping up on this and make these decisions based on good, sound engineering principles. Unfortunately, what I've learned in my career through the years is that's not always the case. It can go both ways. And so I always ask the question of other elected officials, have you ever had that communication and that discussion with your staff and with your engineers regarding the balance of getting the highest quality end product for the best economical price? I got to say, I don't see it happening a lot in our county where the elected officials are having that discussion. And I would ask each of you to kind of think of that too. Luckily, your department, I feel, does a very good job with that. Now, this job in front of you tonight, I believe it was originally budgeted at a much higher number. It came in at a very good number. I understand that there also may be some additional savings that I'm not sure if that's going to be addressed or not also. But looking at this, whatever the outcome is, whatever all of you decide along with your staff, I think you're going to end up with a very good quality end product here that not only the department can be proud of, but the city as a whole. So with that, I just thank you again, and then thank you for serving the public also. Have a good evening.
Councilmember Palmieri has a question.
Excuse me, Mr. Langler. I'm sorry, perhaps I missed it. Are you connected with
I am a,
PTS
no, I am not.
contractors?
I am not. I'm actually a manufacturer with a manufacturer called Advanced Drainage Systems, or ADS Pipe. PTS is a contractor, an independently owned contractor out of the Green Bay area.
Okay,
Mhm.
so you just kind of randomly selected this item to speak on?
Basically, I mean, we have, the city has had us in their standard specifications, our products, for several years, for many years. This is a very big project, as you can see by the amount of money that you have to deal with here tonight. However, there's, a lot of decisions that have to go into this type of thing. So there, like I said, there is a potential, depending upon how your discussion goes and things, to choose between two different types of pipe. There's a big dollar number associated with that change. Again, that's where you hire your experts to make those decisions and things.
So you
But-
don't receive any remuneration?
I do make a commission on product I sell. So
Okay.
absolutely, I don't want to come
Okay.
across that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I see no further discussion required by council, so would you please
I
take
just,
Deputy Mayor Herman?
just one brief comment before. I'm sure council members looked over the bills provided by the finance director. There were 13 bills that showed $1,500 being paid out to citizens. I just wanted to compliment those citizens. They actually got the $1,500 payment for being involved with our lead pipe program. And that was the money that they received in reimbursement, I believe, is the way the finance director relayed that information to me.
That is correct. Through the lead private water service replacement program and through the funding that we've received from the Department of Natural Resources, that's what's funding those reimbursements. So all of those property owners had their private side lead water service replaced, and that $1,500 is the maximum for reimbursement that's in our policy.
Right. I just wanted to compliment those citizens that took advantage of that program, because so many times we have the programs and unfortunately they don't take advantage. So I just wanted to compliment those citizens that took advantage of that program, and we did come through with $1,500 towards reimbursement, and we're continuing that program into 18, correct?
Yes, the program has expanded a little bit. That was a policy update that was approved, I believe, a few meetings ago to expand the program for 18.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think now we can take the roll.
I need a motion, please.
I want to speak on 18101.
Okay.
I actually asked some questions for, is Kathy Snell or Mr. Mauer here?
Ms. Snell's here.
Yes, Ms. Snell, on this special event for Expansion Theory with Opera House Square, Peabody's Ale House, Twisted Roots, the Oshkosh Main Street Music Festival, it looks like we are being asked to allow the music to go amplified for a total of, and this is at Peabody's and/or Twisted Roots, 9 hours on, let's see, 14 hours on Friday and 9 hours on Saturday, and going till 11 p.m. starting at 9 a.m. So this is amplified, correct? Outdoors.
They're bands outdoors, correct.
And
I don't, the Friday, they typically do their bands indoors for the most part until later in the day. And then the 2 o'clock time on Saturday, they start following the farmer's market.
so for both days, there would be amplified music abutting residential properties, because it looks like on the map, the band stages are located to the rear of the property, not really on Main Street, but more off Main Street on Division or towards the back of these properties abutting residential, correct?
They're in properties right next door to the both Peabody's and Twisted Roots.
The other question I have, and I don't know if this is for you or for Chief Smith, but are they well aware of the city noise ordinance as far as the amplified, that they're not to go above? I mean, are they made aware in this process, in the application process?
Yes, and they are aware that if any concerns or complaints would come in, they would be to call a police department, as other neighborhoods certainly do. And then typically what happens, and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically what happens is they'll go out and do a decibel level check. And if that, in fact, is over that, they do require that they turn the music down.
And so how did we come to the decision? Did they choose the location for the band stages, or did we recommend that? And if so, why would we do that in that location?
We have not. This is the application that they bring to us.
Okay. Chief?
Yeah, thank you. In reference to any noise complaints, whether it be from a tavern that is regularly operating or for any of the festivals that council approves along the way, we typically look for compliance on a first complaint for the event. We'll go in there, we'll tell them, look, the music's too loud, there's your decibel readings, amplified sound, and then we ask them to turn it down, to lower the sound, and if we come back for subsequent times, then we potentially would write them for an ordinance ticket at that point.
I did receive, I don't know if other council members did or not, a couple of calls regarding the band and the bass in particular, which I believe I've been told in the past we don't necessarily measure bass. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the location may not make that much of a difference, you know, a difference of, if it's a Main Street Music Festival, wouldn't those bands be more like on Main Street instead of like Division or, and okay, full disclosure, I live a block from there. So I don't know if I'm gonna really be interested in hearing booming music for that long of a stretch. But based on the phone calls that I've received in the past 2 years for some of the events, I'm just curious whether or not there might be some rearranging or some recommendations that it could tweak it a little bit, or if we even have that conversation. Because if we can't measure the bass, we can only measure the decibel level. So those are my concerns.
Councilmember Peck.
Just to let Councilmember Palmieri know, the stage in the Peabody parking lot, that is facing to the west, and basically it's at the back end of the parking lot, and it is directly across the street from the parking lot that is at 541 or 547 North Main Street, so the old King Cliff lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it is.
But these are the houses right there.
But the sound is directed this way, and if I do remember, working right across the street from there, I do remember that particular setup last year is they actually do have on that stage that they set up, they actually have a shell towards the back to focus the sound back out that way.
Thank you.
If there is no further discussion required by council, would you please take the roll?
May I please have a motion?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Palmieri.
I'd like to make a motion to amend this based on.
Do you just want to pull an item?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, just real quick, point of order, there's already a motion to approve the group. So technically,
But
what?
any council
is-
member can pull
okay.
an item from the,
Even after the motion has been made?
Yeah,
Okay,
just
all right.
prior to the vote.
Okay, all right.
So I'd like to pull 18101. Motion to pull 101.
you don't need a
No
motion, you just
Help
pull
me
it.
out here.
Yep, it's pulled. So it will be the consent agenda minus 18101.
And then we'll vote separately on 101.
Correct.
We're ready to take the roll.
Okay. Krause,
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Palmieri?
We're voting on pulling this, or we're voting on?
Voting
the
on
consent
what,
agenda
everything
minus?
except what you pulled.
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Pansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Now we'll go back to Resolution 18-101, which has been pulled. So Pam, we now need a motion.
Yep.
Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Palmieri.
So if I may ask to have this amended to just tweak this location. Again, it's a Main Street Music Festival. I would argue that the band stages could be closer to Main Street, moved away from the more residential concentration to the rear of the lots.
We're looking for a second.
Is that something in their plans that they could do, or I mean, is it possible?
I have no idea. I wasn't involved in this. I'm just, you would need a second to discuss it further, so.
Here comes Ms. Snell. Maybe she can.
Is there a second to put it on?
I'll
the-
second it.
Thank you.
Now we need discussion.
Yeah.
The way it currently is set up with the stage to the back, so they bring things in, they set up, so the back and the band and the music is all behind. So typically when the attendees go into that beer garden area, that's where they stay. They don't go past a stage to get to an area where they're watching the band. So I think that might create a little bit of a shift in, obviously, their setup and having people coming into the beer garden, walking past all of the band equipment and wiring and, excuse me, and cords and things. We can certainly take that back to them as an option, but I think that might be some of their concerns.
Councilmember Pansky.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Snell, the information that we have in here, including the map, looks like it's dated 2015.
They use the same map every year.
So do we have any updated information? Because I mean, folklore, for example, isn't even folklore anymore. I mean, there are some changes on here. So I'm just wondering if the information from 2015.
Where are you looking?
Page 132, for example, in what I have on my agenda here. It says right on the top, Music Festival 2015, and it has a list. So I'm just wondering if the images that are with our information are also from 2015. You know, the dates on the top are incorrect for this year. So I am wondering if.
I would assume that that would be correct. They're just taking a photo, and I don't know how long ago Google was updated, if those are the same as what's on Google, because this looks like it's just pulled right off of Google calendars or Google Maps.
Do we require them to have up-to-date information on their applications?
Most of so typically what I do is ask them if it's the same, if it's the exact same map as it was before. I didn't catch that it said 2015 on that section of the map. I really look at their front page application and the dates that they're putting in for. And if they say that their maps are typically the same, we typically utilize the same maps as we have before. This is generally just giving an outlay of North Main Street. And then the two other attachments are where the Twisted Roots and the Peabodys, where they'll be setting up the stages outside.
And this might be a question for Chief Smith as well, but have we received any complaints specifically regarding this music festival in the previous years? I don't know how long it's been going on, but.
The music festival's been going on for several years, but to give you a accurate reflection, I'd have to look at records. I don't know if we've had any complaints specifically on the music festival itself. We have had complaints at Peabody's, but not during the music festival. I do know about that, and Peabody's ultimately ended up getting a citation for loud music as it relates to the regular course of business.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
I think that was my question, is I remember this festival, or this music festival has been going on for a while, and I don't remember any specific calls or any specific emails regarding the setup or any complaints, not that I recall.
Councilmember Peck.
And again, firsthand knowledge being right across the street during this, speaking to the one that's in the Peabody's Ale House parking lot, part of the reason it is located there is because the crowd then is in the parking lot, stays in the parking lot, is not on the sidewalk. It's a matter of getting the band situated along with being able to have the crowd control that they're looking for, is having a place for the people that are at the band listening to it, having a place for them to be. So that is, you know, what the layout is, and this has been the layout, as was indicated, the same layout for the past several years. And as Council Member Allison Osby said, that she doesn't recall receiving any complaints or.
Councilmember Palmieri.
Well, I don't know if you were not called or not, but I do recall specifically getting several phone calls in one evening from the resident directly behind the stage. There were some adjustments, but there were still ongoing problems. And that was just one. It looks like the location for the Twisted Roots one is the same as last year, but I also had some of the neighbors in Middle Village, specifically behind Division and Central, who made complaints to me in person. So perhaps you weren't contacted, but I was.
We have a motion and a second to amend resolution.
No, it was just a motion and a second to approve it. There's nothing on the floor to amend.
There was a motion to amend to, I believe, move the stages closer to Main Street, and that was seconded.
Yes.
So we didn't need to take a vote on the amendment, which would call for moving stages somewhere closer to Main Street.
Closer to Main Street.
How much closer to Main Street?
About this far. Yeah, as I recall, some of those, they're pretty well confined. There's not a whole lot of place to move anything the size of a stage anywhere on that property, is there?
Well, there's an entire parking lot. If you look at the map, if you look at the tent stage at Twisted Roots, it's abutting Division Street. There's an entire length of the parking lot to move closer to Main Street. And if you look at the Peabody's band shell, again, they're at the rear, and they could come forward. What I was asking, and this is just an example, is whether or not we're, thinking along the lines of the special events are wonderful for bringing people downtown, but are we also considering where we locate certain aspects of it in relation to the shoulder neighborhoods that we refer to in our Central City investment strategy? In this particular case, the motion was made to move the tents, or to revise the plan, the location plan, to move the tents closer to Main Street. I don't have a specific.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
I guess, Ms. Palmieri, I guess maybe a recommendation would be the event's not until July. Do you want to give it another couple of weeks in which you can reach out to them? Because I think to look at something on paper and completely suggest that we can move things around when it's an event they have had in the past, to make that decision for them, I don't think is appropriate. So an alternative is, given the time frame of it being down the road quite a ways, do you want to reach out to them and have a discussion with them to see if there is an option to maybe change the plan versus us making a decision not hosting the event ourselves? That would be a suggestion.
You know, on second thought, I'll withdraw my motion to amend. Let's take it to a vote, and let's see what happens.
Mr. Krause, you withdraw yours?
Withdraw your second.
I'll withdraw my second.
What are we voting on?
The
Original
original.
motion.
Would you please take the roll?
Krause?
No.
Peck?
Aye.
Palmieri?
No.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Pansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 5-2.
That concludes the consent agenda portion. We'll move on to pending ordinances. The first is ordinance 18-107, approved request to attach to the city from Town of Algoma, Pickard Attachment, 9th Street Road and Clearville Road. Pam, is there anyone who registered to speak?
No one is registered.
Bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I see no one wishing to speak. Would you please take the roll?
Krause?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Pansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next is ordinance 18-108, amend Chapter 2 of the City Municipal Code to combine the Traffic Review Advisory Board and Parking Utility Commission into a single Traffic and Parking Advisory Board. Pam, did anyone set up to speak to this?
No one is registered.
I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion? I see no one wishing to speak. Would you please take the roll?
Krause?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Pansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 7.
We have 6 new ordinances, none of which will be voted on this evening. The first is ordinance 18-109, prohibit sexting by juveniles. And would Chief Smith come up here and explain what the intention of this and the need for it?
Thank you, Mayor. To kind of shed some light on this with council, with the advent of new technology as well as emerging social media platforms, the chiefs of police within Winnebago County, as well as the sheriff of Winnebago County, have all noticed through our particular agencies that we are running into an issue where juveniles are making bad decisions. They're sending illicit photos of themselves to other juveniles. One-time issue, but then when we get the unfortunate time where we have to investigate these occurrences, currently law enforcement is faced with only 2 options, which really is to charge somebody criminally as a misdemeanor for disorderly conduct using electronic device, or charging them with a felony, which is possession or distribution of child pornography. It's a bad decision. It's a decision that some of our children may or may not make, but it's a bad decision that they make without having clear understanding of the consequences that go along with that, such as being saddled with a criminal conviction, but also potentially being saddled with a conviction as a sex offender and having a lifetime registry as a sex offender for making one bad decision as a juvenile. Our school resource officers have come to each of the chiefs and have indicated that this is a problem through the schools, that we were looking for a solution. The solution being this ordinance violation coupled with a diversion program that is administered through the DA's office and Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, where a first-time offender has the option of certainly receiving the ordinance ticket or going through the diversion program once they're referred to the DA's office. This is a multi-jurisdictional effort. Every jurisdiction in the county of Winnebago is bringing an ordinance similar to this to their respective boards and councils. And we as chiefs of police and the sheriff believe that this is something that we can certainly use to help our children in the community.
Thank you. Councilperson Pansky.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, we had talked briefly about this topic, and I was Specifically, the participation fee for the diversion program, you said was established at $100.
Yes.
And then I had a follow-up question regarding that as far as financial responsibility, if that burden would fall onto the parents. And at the time that we had spoke, you didn't have an answer for that. Just wondering if there was any progress? Or
No, I
if we-
do not have an answer for that. That'd be administered through the county and the DA's office. They would have to pay that fee, if you will, prior to going into the program. It is an upfront fee that they would have to pay.
Okay, so obviously a parent could pay that on behalf
Yes.
of their
Oh,
child
yes,
at any
absolutely.
time? And
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, okay, that's perfect, thank you.
Councilperson Palmieri.
I guess it saddens me that we would even have to do this, that it would be required of council that this is something that we have to deal with. But one of my questions is, with that multi-jurisdictional effort, is everybody on the same page in terms of the amount of the fine, the $200?
I believe so. Actually, the city of Oshkosh did the original draft of the ordinance, and we distributed that to all the other jurisdictions within the county. But to tell you absolutely yes, if it is, it's close to the same amount, yes.
And then the only other question I had was, do we have a sense of like how many, you said the school liaison officers reported that this is a problem. Have they kind of quantified that?
Well, we tried to quantify it. The unfortunate thing is that because frankly, officers are trying to do their best to not charge them with a sex offense.
Right.
They've been charging them with creatively with disorderly conduct, using a electronic device. They may refer them to some counseling somewhere else. There's no real way to capture it at this time as to what's occurring. We really are relying anecdotally upon what the school resource officers throughout the county are telling us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Pam, did anyone wish to speak to this issue?
No one is registered.
Move on to ordinance 18110, modify parking regulations on Georgia Street, west side from South Park Avenue to Osborne. Pam, did anyone register to speak to this?
No one is registered.
I bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
No, there's no
That's right.
action taken on these.
Even have this highlighted. Ordinance 18-111, modify parking regulations on West 4th Avenue and Grove Street.
No one is registered.
Thank you. Ordinance 18-112, readopt municipal code book. Pam?
No one is registered.
Ordinance 18-113, approve zone change from an institutional, in parentheses I, close parentheses, district, to single-family residential 5, in parentheses SR-5, close parentheses, district, 1650 Villa Park Drive. Plan Commission recommends approval. Did anyone register to speak to this?
No one is registered.
And finally, ordinance 18-114, approve zone change from central mixed-use district, in parentheses CMU, close parentheses, to central mixed-use district with planned development overlay, in parentheses CMU-PD, close parentheses 566 North Main Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. Did anyone register to speak to this?
No one is registered.
Next is Resolution 18-115, approve waiver of fees for extraordinary services for special event / Oshkosh Saturdays Market, Inc. Pam, did anyone register to speak to this resolution?
No one is registered.
I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilman Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have said in the past, I fully support the farmers market. I believe in what they do. There are 10 sets of conditions here. Mr. Roloff has checked off, I believe there's 7 out of the 10 that are met. When I look at it, I see 6 out of the 10, so it's a 6-4. And Based on my reading of this and what I have, and the thoughts that I have, is some of the things that have been discussed are, is the waiver of this fee. This is what it comes down to, is the waiver of this fee. And this council has the decision, has the prerogative to waive these fees. Council has historically in the past not waived fees. We have been approached by several organizations to waive their fees. While yes, we have the ability to do this, I cannot support the waiver of this fee at this time. Fully supporting the farmer's market. $9,000. We talk about 140 vendors each week, approximately 20 weeks. So let's do the math. Let's figure things down to 100 vendors, 20 weeks. That's $2,000. That's $4.50 a week of an increased cost. I fully understand the fact that this is an increase that would be passed on. I also understand that there are other opportunities, that when I look at some of the materials that we got, is that there's something about sponsorships. And I believe, based on the number of contacts each and every one of us received related to the support of this, that the citizens, and there are organizations out there in the community that support this, that may be opportunities to sponsor the farmers market, to cover these costs. So fully supporting the farmers market and what it does, but also understanding why we have the special events and what the ramifications are that could come forward, I will not support this at this time.
Councilperson Palmieri.
I think most people that we've heard from look at the farmers market as an outlier on the special events because of the fact that it is a seasonal market. It goes year-round, the 22 weeks outside, and I believe that it doesn't fit very neatly into our definition of an event. Most people think of an event when we talk about these as a one-time or several days kind of festival. And I believe that staff has done an excellent job at spelling out the criteria. You know, this does more than benefit vendors. This builds social capital and resiliency in the community. I feel that the one person that we heard from via email, or at least that I heard from, that objected to it was someone from Sawdust Days, who said, well, you know, if we do this for the farmers market, then Sawdust Days should be allowed to, and I just don't put them in the same category. The other thing I think that we have to consider is when you multiply out the 180 free spaces in this most recent 2017-2018, the free spaces that were provided to organizations and other efforts and other nonprofits and the city, you know, different city departments, neighborhood associations. If the farmers market were to charge, let's say $25 per space, well, half of that $9,000 would be met at $4,500. So there's an in-kind service, there are in-kind services going on that you can't even quantify beyond the ones that you can quantify. So I will be supporting the waiving of the extraordinary service fees for the Oshkosh Saturday Farmers Market.
Councilperson Pansky.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple questions for probably the Leathermans, if either one of you are available, and then probably for staff as well. While they're coming up here, I just want to clarify that, is this something that is for 1 year, this time period, or is this indefinitely as long as the farmer's market is in its current form?
The answer is it depends on whatever council approves, but I believe the purpose of the request is permanent.
Permanent?
I would believe so, yeah.
Okay. And thank you for your time. My question is regarding, now if we waive the fees for your special event, you would still expect all of the current services that the city offers, correct? I know that we're not very involved with a heavy police presence, but there is some work done for barricades, traffic control, electricity use, and that would remain consistent, correct?
Correct.
Or your
We would-
expectations would be?
Right. We do pay the electricity. That is passed along to our vendors. We do, I mean, I'm not opposed to paying for a policeman or CSO to put up the signs. I guess what I'm opposed to a little bit is I'll pay for the barricades, but the person that drives the truck he drives in and the trailer he hauls them on, I think is a little excessive.
Fair enough. In the event that this does go through, is this being passed on to any of your other vendors? Are they, I know that they have, specific rental fees throughout their time at the market. Is that going to be reduced at all to reflect the savings that you would be waived here?
No, because we have held our fees steady for the last 5 years. We have not increased our fees. We increased our fees several years ago when Dennis and I were managing the market for 5 years at no charge. We did this as a volunteer. 3 years ago, in fact, 5 years ago, we knew that we were eventually going to have to pay somebody to do this. So we started to increase the fees over 3 years. And then at the 3rd year, we agreed with the vendors that we would not increase it anymore, that we would hold steady. And we have honored that.
Okay, thank
Councilperson Krause.
I just had a question to Mr. Peck's suggestion. Ma'am, sorry, that was for you, I'm sorry. Has there been any talks about getting sponsorships, just to kind of put it out there? I mean, has that been something that you guys have approached businesses on?
We have approached many businesses. In fact, every downtown business we have approached. We have had a couple of the banks step forward. We have had sponsorships in the past. I guess what I have a hard time doing is saying, please sponsor our market so that we can pay our bill. We honor the sponsorships with giving them recognition for the music and giving them recognition throughout the market on vendor signs and posters, etc. So it's not that we're sitting on our hands and doing nothing. We have every year looked for sponsors.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Herman.
You can sit down. I don't have no question. I support waiving the fees also. When I look at special events, and I've been doing this for a long time, and this special event ordinance was actually on the books prior to all of us being on council. So I sometimes think that we need to review, we reviewed last year the fee side of it, but really the intent of the ordinance, because I agree with Councilmember Palmyra that this one doesn't quite fit what a special event really is because of the different benefits to the community. One, the bid realizes now after all the years that it is an event that benefits the bid. It's in the bid district completely. So they realize that. They realize that there's a benefit to their membership by having the farmers market on Main Street. There's a benefit to the businesses that are up and down Main Street. I do think that it's really a city event, even though we don't take ownership of it. I do think it is, because it puts Oshkosh on the map. Puts Oshkosh out there as ranked as one of the best farmers markets in the country. That's the city, even though we're not taking credit for it and the city didn't develop it. But it did start in the city parking lot too, and it's now down on the city street. I understand there are costs for the event, and I understand that Other events are probably gonna be clamoring. I'm sure Sawdust Days there'll be other events that we'll look at the same way. But most of those events are still for a cause, and they're in a event, 1 day, 2 days, maybe even 5. And they do benefit the community, they do benefit our businesses, they do benefit. But a lot of those cost police services, they cost ambulance services, they cost fire services. They provide us to do a lot more planning to make the event safe for our citizens. So that's a whole different entity. This is a community event that is family-oriented. It helps low-income families that can put food on the table. They can use their EBT tokens. It provides the opportunity for families to come in and network and enjoy Oshkosh. Boaters tie up on our docks and walk down to the farmer's market. So I do think it is a different event than what we would traditionally call a special event. And I reluctantly, for many years, was not in favor of waiving the fees, but I do think that it's different than other events that we have in the city, just like the one we were discussing earlier tonight with the louder music and all those things. This is a event that happens all summer long and is something that this city should be proud of. And I think the few dollars that are being absorbed, I think, as Ms. Weatherman said, they'll pick up the cost for probably 90% of it now, as she said. So I'm sure maybe the route to actually go is approve the waiver, but maybe come back with a modified so that we know exactly what we're waiving. Because if they're gonna pay the electrical, they're gonna pay the officer to put out the no parking signs, they're gonna pay for some of that, then it's not the total $9,000 roughly, correct? Isn't that where we're at?
Yep.
We're waiving everything,
The
correct?
request was for everything.
Right,
Mrs. Leatherman
so,
suggested something else.
that being said, I guess I maybe make an amendment to this motion, or to this resolution, to approve a waiver of what the farmer's market just agreed to pay for, and we waive what they won't pay for, which is basically the barricades, and the vehicle to take them out there, and the, those types of things, but they're willing to pay for the other services that the city is providing them. So it's almost, why waive it all if they're willing to feel that they understand why some of the services are being billed the way they are. So I guess I would make a motion to amend the ordinance, or actually to table the ordinance. I'll change it. Table the ordinance, have Ms. Snell work with the farmer's market.
Lay over.
What's that?
Lay over.
All right. Lay over this ordinance, work with the farmer's market to specifically iron out exactly what they're willing to pay for and what then they are actually requesting a waiver for from the city.
I think before we ask for a second, we should allow council members to speak who've pressed their buttons, so.
Do we need a
That's the
second to
procedure.
discuss it?
You
though?
actually need a second to discuss it.
I would,
But we've got people who wanted to speak before Deputy Mayor Herman spoke.
An amendment would take priority.
yeah. Then I did approach some council members, I did approach people to do a similar thing. So I will support that. I will second the motion to lay over until next meeting?
Yeah, next council meeting.
Till the next council meeting, so that these charges can in essence be identified, and as well as, provide the opportunity for the farmer's market to, reach out, see if there is, to tap into the support of this in word, and see if that there is also support of it in financial. So,
Councilperson Allison Osby.
to lay over?
Well, they've been trying to speak.
So I guess that's my question, because before Councilor Herman, I had an amendment as well. I'm happy to not have it as an amendment, but rather as a discussion, or what I think might be a idea from a business standpoint. So I don't know where that would be appropriate to discuss, since we've got amendments out there already. So if there could be some guidance from.
Councilman Peck?
To speak?
Yeah.
No, I was, is before the motion to
All right, Councilman
layover
Palmieri?
was there.
Chair.
Yeah, just two questions here. I'm sorry, Councilmember Peck, did you just say you had approached a couple of the council members?
I approached one council member.
Oh, okay.
And I I did have some discussions with other people throughout the community.
I see.
Did have a discussion earlier tonight when we had a chat. But I did make an offer to say, or threw out some suggestions to the farmer's market, and I'm willing to work with them further.
And I'm sorry.
So it's a matter of, Chris, I did suggest to see, would it be possible to offer alternatives about getting
I think I still
sponsorships
have
for
the floor. I just wanted to ask that question. Ms. Leatherman, are you currently the market manager? Can somebody who's like in an official capacity for the market make that recommendation? Because I'm not sure what the status is.
I'm the executive director of the Oshkosh Saturday Farmers Market Incorporated.
Okay, okay. So would you be speaking then for the board, for the market? And if the bid has now taken responsibility for that, would you be speaking on behalf of both entities?
I am not speaking on behalf of the bid, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That would be Chris.
All right, then while you're here, and our
Well, I'm next.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
There's no question this has been a great event for the city. I'm there almost every Saturday. I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits that are there Saturday. Everyone there is there to make money. I don't care if you're selling tomatoes or corn, or if you're trying to raise funds for a nonprofit. You're there to generate money. Bottom line, am I correct?
Yes.
You're not there because you want to stand on Main Street for 4 or 5 hours every Saturday. But I think it's a great event for the city. My biggest concern is, and I've said this before about things, when you manage by exception, it's very dangerous. It's dangerous when you run a business. It's dangerous with your children. It's dangerous for the council to make exceptions. We have policies in place, and we should operate by policies that we approve, not make exceptions, because we're pressured into it. We get 101 emails. I would agree with laying this over for a while, but I would like to see, part of that is some sort of a plan to find sponsors. What has been done in the past?
All due respect, we do, every year. I'm sorry, but it doesn't equate to $10,000 of fees, which are going to increase the next 4
Well,
years.
I don't want to be argued with. I want to see some sort of plan, how you plan to find and groom some sponsors. One sponsor for 1 year, or a couple of major sponsors. We're not talking huge dollars. But there has to be a plan in place. Who do you plan to approach? How do you plan to? What are the benefits for a company or organization to sponsor or be one of the sponsors of the event? So can we put that into, we're just laying this over, so that's something that should be discussed in this whole process of paying for what is used and not used. Is that
Correct.
okay? All right, well,
You have the wording? No?
Yes.
So we're all clear, go ahead.
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Allison Osby?
Thank you.
You made me do that.
Thank you.
Look at this stuff.
So what I was hoping is that maybe we could kind of talk about a plan cooperatively, because I agree with everything everybody has said. I think the farmer's market is great for a lot of reasons. I know for us back a long time ago, it was those types of events that led to brick and mortar. There's a lot of great business startups that sometimes start out at festivals or farmers markets and things like that. You know, I'm all for entrepreneurship. And So I do think it's great, and I mean, our farmers market has been talked about in different publications regarding an asset, quality of life, things of that nature. So, you know, but also too, it is a slippery slope whenever you do manage by exception. So, I mean, I really do, truly do agree with everything everybody has said. And so when I was thinking about it, I thought, you know, what is a good compromise? Because I never thought I would see the day that the relationship between the city of Oshkosh and the farmers market organization would become an us against them. I would have never dreamed that or seen that, and I very much can feel that in some of the body language, and that greatly saddens me. You know, we've talked about sponsors and things like that, and so one of the thoughts that I had, or the amendment that I had wanted to make, but if we're going to lay over, that might be a consideration, is does the city of Oshkosh then sponsor, and we cover 50% of the special event fee? And then, you know, we are a sponsor as the city. And then I thought, well, you know, then that would leave approximately $4,500, and if you broke it down, you could possibly ask maybe for $2,000 sponsors that would maybe be gold sponsors. I would hope at $4,500 we'd be a gold sponsor, which would then leave five maybe silver sponsors at $500. And I'm committed to that because I've already spoke to a business in which would already be a you know, a silver sponsor, which then would take it down. I'm just trying to figure out a way that would be a good compromise, so that, you know, we're not just, you know, waiving a fee to enter that slippery slope, and to give that commitment of the city to do that. And then I, as a council member and somebody in the community, I've already found an additional $500 from a private business, you know, and maybe that's something collectively as a council we could work on as a project, or perhaps, you know, working with the farmers market. So it's just a thought, and since we have time to carry over, I think it's worth consideration.
Councilman Peck.
Thank you. I would agree with Ms. Allison Osby. That was one of the things that I was thinking was a compromise, and I did mention that earlier this evening in a discussion that we had. I think that what we do is that we lay it over. I do appreciate Ms. Osby saying that we as a council should go out and seek sponsorships. That again creates a slippery slope, because then what other nonprofit do we, you know, how do we deal with that? I think that's something we do more on our own personal basis as opposed to as a council person.
Yeah,
I think you meant that, but I would
agree.
And I would obviously reach out to my connections, and I think that that's the thing is that, but again, I think that with the amount of support that we heard, that there is support, there's financial support out there that can be had and can be found. So, and I think we can come to an agreement and come with some type of a compromise where we can still maintain our policy and to have a little sturdier ground to stand on should the next time something comes up that someone asks for a waiver of a fee.
Deputy Mayor Herman.
I was just going to ask the clerk to reread the amendment.
The
Lay it over.
amendment that I have is to lay over, to get clarification from the farmers market what they are willing to pay for, and revise the waiver request.
Great.
Everybody on the same page?
I would agree.
Okay. And other council members can still weigh in. Thank you.
Councilman Rapansky.
Just a question for Councilmember Allison Osby regarding that sponsorship then. Is that something that we are going to have to be prepared for other special events coming to us and asking for sponsorships then? And if so, is this something that we should look into putting into our ordinance?
I guess it just came from a spirit of cooperation. I mean, I'm listening to my council members who are incredibly passionate about the farmers market. So it's just a good faith gesture to say I'm willing to come forward, because otherwise the temptation would be to say no, that we can't make exceptions. But for all of the reasons that I listed before, you know, I do think it's quite valuable. It does add to the quality of life. You know, it did start in the City Hall parking lot, so, you know, again, I don't want to pick a fight or have this become a us and them. I'm just trying to come up with ideas so that it goes back to kind of how we were, in which, you know, it was really a fantastic partnership and a relationship in the city.
Okay, one comment, you know, the farmers market has become a tremendous asset for the city. It's very much a part of quality of life, and we've been noted for things that have occurred in the city in the last few years. The Wisconsin Herd, the Arena, Oshkosh Corp, and all those happened because of collaboration. And we've got cities asking us who are involved, other mayors, what are you doing differently in Oshkosh? How are we getting all these things done? It's through collaboration, as I said, at Oshkosh Corp. My grandson calls it teamwork. That's what we called it 8 years ago, too. Collaboration is a much longer word, but it's working together to get things done, and I think the farmers market is too important to the city to not find a way to make it work financially. And that's what we're talking about, money. Bottom line is money. Somebody's got to come up with the money for all this stuff. And I think that has to be the goal. How do we collaborate and solve the financial issue so it's a win-win for everyone? But I would strongly like to suggest that a plan be put together to go after sponsors. And I have found over the years of being involved in different fundraisers, there's far more success in going after the smaller person than the same large people over and over and over again. When the smaller businesses get asked, they say, "What? We'd love to participate." No one ever asked us. So that's what I'm saying about a plan. You know, we all think, let's go after the big corporations, you get the big bucks. We're done with the day. I think we have to think creatively how we do this and how we get sponsors. So if that can be given as far as just laying it over, I think that's a very critical part of it. So, Councilmember Palmieri.
One last comment. It's been brought up that this risk being perceived as managing by exception. At the risk of sounding uncivil, frankly, that annoys me greatly because on numerous occasions, this council has managed by exception everything from the smallest liquor license extension, inactive liquor license extension, to extensions and claims of hardship for noise going beyond our ordinance, to larger issues such as TIF policies that we worked hard on to approve. So I don't really feel that it's appropriate to call this managing by an exception. And that's all I have to say on that.
Councilmember Krause.
I'm okay with laying it over for a couple weeks because nothing's going to change in the next couple weeks anyways, but I look at the farmers market as the gold standard for our community of events, and everybody else can hold their scoring system up to our farmers market. And if they want to come forward and ask for a waiver of fees or a portion of their fees to be cut, bring your story and see how it compares to the farmers market. And if it does, we can discuss their issue too. Because I mean, everybody needs a voice. If they think their community event is as important as the farmers market, let them come forward. Thank you.
Okay, I see no one wishing to speak. Would you please take the roll?
Krause,
We're taking the roll on.
to lay it over.
Lay it over.
Aye.
Pack,
Aye.
Palmieri,
No.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Pansky,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
carried 6-1.
Next, we have Resolution 18-116, provide direction to staff relating to Oshkosh Avenue corridor improvements, in parentheses, Oshkosh Avenue, Kohler Street, and Westfield Street. Before I ask you, Pam, if anyone wishes to speak to that, let's have Steve go to explain, or James, what you got.
Steve and I are going to try and do this a little bit together here. Put together a bit of a short presentation, just to try to summarize what was presented in the memo and is presented in the resolution before you tonight. Looking at this, there's really five different options that we presented in the memo as kind of tying together of the various alternatives that were presented in the traffic impact analysis report from KL Engineering. I'm sorry. Option A as presented is really leave the corridor as it is. Option B is the 4-lane undivided with the turn lanes at North Westfield Street. Option C is the 4-lane divided. Option D is the two-way left turn, and option E is really a short-term selection of option B with a long-term selection of option C. So a little bit more detail. Certainly leaving the corridor as is, as everyone is aware. It's the right-of-way is what it is. It's a 4-lane undivided street section with the sidewalk immediately adjacent to the back of curb and the right-of-way on the other side. So, it is back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk paved within that right-of-way. Going to option B, this was alternate 1 as presented in the traffic impact analysis. That is 4-lane undivided with the turn lanes at North Westfield Street. So you can see, in the remainder of the corridor, there is looking at the long-term implementation here, trying to get a little bit of green space and get those sidewalks pushed back from the back of curb. Provides, a little extra protection for the pedestrians on the sidewalk, gives, in the wintertime, a little bit of space for snow storage. But also, at North Westfield Street, it develops that dedicated left turn lane, which would get turning traffic out of the through lanes. So it would improve the service at that intersection.
And James, just for this option, where is, again, just refresh my memory, where is the 4-lane undivided?
The entire street right now is a 4-lane undivided from Keller to...
Well, with the turn lanes, is option B.
Option B would develop turn lanes at North Westfield Street only.
So that would only be basically expanding the artery, so to speak.
Yeah, it would grow out to technically like 5 lanes at the intersection, because you'd have a dedicated left turn lane in each direction that would be immediately, facing each other. So you'd keep your 2 through lanes and then have that dedicated left. Option C is alternate 3 as presented in the traffic impact analysis, which is going to the 4-lane divided corridor from North Keller Street to North Eagle Street. And again, developing the left turn lanes at North Westfield Street intersection. So the median there would be, kind of narrow down to, kind of just a little bit of a curb island to develop that additional left turn lane to, again, get that left turning traffic out of the through lanes. The remainder of the corridor would remain in a 4-lane undivided, very similar to what it is now. As presented, option C, which was alternate 3 in the traffic impact analysis, that was the recommendation for the corridor in the TIA from KL Engineering. That was also the recommendation from the Traffic Review Advisory Board and also from the Plan Commission. Option D is is alternate 2 in the traffic impact analysis, and that is the 2-way left turn lane. So from Keller to Eagle Street, it's from a layout standpoint very similar to option C. It's just instead of having a median, you have the 2-way left turn lane in the middle. And then from Eagle Street to the Fox River, it narrows down to, instead of the 5-lane to the 3-lane, so 1 lane in each direction with the 2-way left turn, and then developing some additional terrace space in that area where there's currently none. Option E, as I mentioned, is short-term implementation of the 4-lane undivided with the turn lanes at Westfield Street. So basically, option B. With a long-term implementation of the 4-lane divided cross-section, which is option C. This particular option, we would certainly look to have the right-of-way width necessary for the implementation of the 4-lane divided, dedicated at this time so that, there's not an additional right-of-way cost at a later date when we would look to implement the final alternative there. From a cost standpoint, option A, the only implication there is, the additional signals for the leg to the north, which has been included in the budget estimates already. Option B, the 4-lane undivided cross-section with the dedicated left turn lanes, that's the roughly $940,000 that was approved in the CIP amendment from November. Option C, the implementation of the 4-lane divided. Again, as we discussed at the last meeting, that would have a total cost estimate of approximately $4.2 million. So that is in excess of what's currently contained within the capital improvement program. Option D, the two-way left turn. As you may recall, 2 weeks ago, we did not have a cost estimate on that option. We have taken a look at that, and we estimate that to be approximately $4 million, so just slightly less than the 4-lane divided option. Option E, certainly the short-term implementation would match with option C, and then the long-term implementation would, be that implementation of approximately 4.2 factored for inflation at whatever time that would be implemented.
Councilman Pansky.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so in the staff memo, there are some breakdowns specifically regarding special assessments. And I know Deputy Mayor Herman and I kind of touched on that aspect at the previous meeting. Specifically, it's in option C and D that there are special assessments involved or incorporated into those costs, correct?
That would be, the cost to construct either of those options is the 4.2 or the 4 million as presented. Our standard special assessment policy for a reconstruction, would state, special assessments would be utilized, and we just wanted to give you an idea on what that amount would be over the corridor, which is what we called out.
Specifically, since you are looking for direction, I support option E, but I am very hesitant because you don't identify in there the special assessment options.
It would be identical to the long-term implementation for option C.
There'd be no initial special assessments because we wouldn't be doing anything that would trigger special assessments with immediately, because we're going B, and option B doesn't involve special assessments. Let's say it was done, we redid it in 7 years, and I'm just being arbitrary because that's 2025. In 2025, the council would, if they were going to do reconstruction in 2025, the council would decide on special assessments at that time, but there would be no special assessments immediately because we wouldn't be doing anything that warrants special assessments if we did option B.
Okay, so you kind of threw out that 7 year,
I just
hypothetical.
threw it
Is
out.
there a time frame specifically when you would like to implement those 4-lane divided lanes?
At this point, no, I do not have a recommendation on when we would, probably look to do it. It would be, certainly a financial consideration. It is, a significant cost. So,
right.
We would look to try to program that into the capital improvement program, where we could and when we felt either, if council wanted to say, now is the time, get it in the plan. Otherwise, I would probably say from our staff standpoint, we would look at it when the street warranted reconstruction if we weren't given direction sooner to do it.
Is that something that your department would be comfortable planning along with this long-term implementation? Is a financial aspect to this as well?
It would be
setting aside funds every year, or the savings that you have in the CIP from specific projects could be put separately, specifically for this road?
Generally, what we do with savings is Finance Director Larson and I, evaluate, okay, we've got a certain number of projects that came in, so we would either reduce a borrowing or something like that. So we would look, rather than kind of, setting up a little bit of a fund to that, we'd probably look at just programming it into the CIP at some point in time so that we didn't run into issues with borrowed money sitting around long-term and run into issues with bond counsel that way.
Right.
Okay. Do we
The
have
other-
any grant opportunities or any matching, anything from DOT or anything that we can explore in this time as well to maybe?
At such time as
take
it
that
may
under-
require reconstruction, then there may be possibilities that, you know, the DOT would participate in a, you know, similar manner to either a, you know, an urban project similar to what North Main Street was from New York to Murdoch, or one of those programs. You know, it is a connecting highway, you know, so it is certainly, you know, a street that they're very interested in. You know, but they wouldn't be looking to do anything with it until, you know, condition warranted.
Right. Okay, well then, just to sum it up, I would support option E, and I would also support the delay of the North Sawyer intersection at this time as well.
We purposely didn't put North Sawyer in with,
Right,
with
not-
the
not to
recommendation
even-
tonight, because, you know, the RDA hasn't looked at that option yet, so we wanted to be fair to the redevelopment authority to give them an opportunity. So that's why we weren't seeking direction on the Sawyer Street intersection tonight.
Well, there you go, you got it anyway. Thank you.
James, one thing that came out in the workshops was, you know, obviously it was repeated a lot, both at the workshops and Plan Commission, that this is a gateway to the city. And this is our chance to do a gateway right. Most of the gateways, if not all, have just plain evolved. I mean, we hear constant complaints about all the wires, the spaghetti hanging all over 9th Street. We hear complaints about, you know, South Park is, it's okay. We get complaints about if you're coming in on Jackson, you go past a landfill, you go past a prison, you go past a hodgepodge of retail outlets on that street. You know, this is our chance to, I guess, to do it right, and, you know, really actually plan a gateway to the city right. And I think, if memory serves me, there's a lot of favor for doing the 4-lane with a median and possibly doing it as a boulevard. So when people do enter the city, either if they're coming from the north or the south, they're entering the city, and we're putting, it's really curb appeal. This is a gateway to the city for parents and students going to the university. It's obviously a gateway for people going to Oshkosh Corp. It's just a gateway into the city. And I think I've said this before, at some point, we should investigate rerouting Algoma to send people into the city, and Algoma go past the homes, the museum, university, send them out on high. So I think these are big dollars, but I think it's sort of an issue of either pay me now or pay me later. And I think we should look at doing it right the first time, and this is really our first chance to do an entrance to the city properly. But, you know, financially, James, or Stephen, isn't it pay me now or pay me later? Is that kind of the bottom line?
It's, yeah, pay now, pay later, you know, disrupt now, disrupt later. You know, those are all certainly things that have to be wrestled with.
And doing it now, there's less of disruption on Oshkosh Avenue. There's really nothing that has been approved or built yet, so if we delay, there'll be buildings there, there'll be businesses there that have to face a lot of disruption, traffic disruption, dust, everything else. Having lived through 2 street construction, the dust is there forever. It's like Legos. But I think it's a matter of, you know, I think we're looking at doing it right as a community, and doing something that'll be right for the next 100 years. And if it's the dollars, as we said, it's either pay me now or pay me later. And there's a lot of problems with doing this, just plain disruption to business if we wait to do this right later. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth. And Councilmember Palmieri.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have some questions regarding some of the assumptions that we have in that traffic impact analysis. I consulted the WIS DOT traffic impact analysis guidelines, and so I just want to clarify. In our assumptions in this analysis, it says that Oshkosh Corporation headquarters is expected to function as a general office building with approximately 650 employees upon its opening in 2019, and an additional 250 employees, 900 total. And then later, we look at, based on that assumption, a generation of 12,370 daily vehicles. And I guess I'm a little confused because I don't know if we're at the same numbers. I think that has to be recalculated based on information that's been provided by Oshkosh Corporation on the number of employees. Does someone want to chime in with the number of employees?
I didn't review the traffic analysis like these guys would have, but the 12,000 number is not a number for Oshkosh Corp. That's for
The corridor.
the corridor itself.
Actually, it says that in combination with the additional development.
Correct.
With the Oshkosh Corporation.
But that's the
how
total
they
for Oshkosh
calculate
Avenue.
it.
That would be the total for Oshkosh Avenue.
Right, but there were some assumptions in there, very specifically, that related to Oshkosh Corp. And based on those numbers. So here's where I want to go with this, is with a reduced number of employees expected by 2019. These levels of service that have been anticipated based on these number of daily trips, the 12,370, if we're only looking at a third of those employees, I don't know what that does to that number. But it also, in those traffic impact analysis guidelines, says that our generally the horizon date is 10 years after opening of the proposed development. We've estimated 2025 and then 2045, and that's well beyond the 10 years. So can you help me understand why we would deviate from those guidelines in our calculation of the horizon?
We wanted to look at a little bit longer duration, recognizing the, really the, if we do a street reconstruction, it's not gonna last 10 or 15 years. It's gonna last 50 years or 60 years. So we wanted to expand that horizon year to make sure that what we were planning for, didn't, kind of become obsolete in just 10 years. Some of the challenges that, were identified in the report with some of the other intersections around the I-41 corridor are because traffic has increased faster than their TIA predicted. So they are at design year volumes much sooner than they thought they would be. So because of some of those implications that we are seeing along the corridor, we felt it was, more important to take a little bit longer look and, have, a little bit higher volume from that later look, because we've been seeing growth much faster along the corridor than I think the DOT predicted during their analyses.
But the report also says, and this is in the conclusions and recommendations for those of you who may be interested.
Which page are you on?
I'm on
Sorry.
page 44.
Okay, thank you.
That much of the expected deterioration of traffic operations would also be expected with only background traffic growth through year 2045. So, I don't know if maybe you want to talk a little bit about background traffic growth, but we didn't really talk about that in the earlier presentation that was given to council prior. I guess maybe you want to address that.
Yeah, KL worked with East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to do long-term, what they're referring to as background traffic growth, or just long-term traffic growth patterns in the corridor. East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission is one of the very few agencies that have, the models that are utilized to try to predict traffic growth patterns. So for this area, other than the DOT doing the analysis, East Central Wisconsin RPC is the one that would do the analysis. They do analysis for all of East Central Wisconsin in those. So they're using that background growth prediction from East Central to try and say, okay, if the redevelopment did not occur, what would we be looking at for long-term growth along this corridor? And then they're also factoring that in with, okay, with the redevelopment and these additional trips on top of that background growth, what are we seeing?
Lori, I'm not sure if your concern is that the numbers are too low, the numbers are too high.
Well, I think that we're going out too far for the horizon date according to the Wisconsin DOT's traffic impact analysis guidelines that was done recently. Perhaps I'm mistakenly reading it, but that is the quote. Generally, the horizon is 10 years out, so it would be 2029, not 2045, number one. Number two, our folks at KL specifically say, it should be noted, however, that much of the expected deterioration of traffic operations would also be expected with only background traffic growth. So it sounds to me like they're saying that, you know, regardless of the development, we would be experiencing issues later down the road anyway.
Absolutely.
No pun intended. So the number of trip generations that they use to calculate, if that's incorrectly calculated based on the addition of the traffic of those developments, then this needs to be recalculated.
I don't understand where you're getting to that point. They took a long-term look at this because they knew that based on the projections that have already been debunked with what the DOT did when they were initially, I believe when they put those estimates together was probably early 2000s when they were planning for the 2012 reconstruction there, and they've already hit the numbers. That was the first thing that KL came in with, was these numbers are higher than what we said. So they can do a 10-year projection, but they're estimating a little higher as a cushion against that. All we're adding is a landscape lane and a turning lane. And so that's why I don't understand. We're not adding that much more. The cost is really to reconstruct, because we can put in the lanes in the short term and be okay with it. If you want to do the more gateway approach, that's really what's going to trigger the extra cost, because the traffic volume is a pretty, for $940,000, that's a fairly modest amount to accommodate traffic for up to 20, 30 years.
Sure.
Councilperson Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand your comments about, you know, the gateway and everything, but I also understand the ramifications of the cost aspect, and that would the special assessments. So I would suggest going with it. My thoughts are to go with option B. And then just the other thing is just to reiterate, Ms. Pansky, was your question answered about, you know, we can't necessarily put monies away that we borrow?
Oh.
You know, I mean, because, just to make, I wanted to make sure that that was clear, because we run into arbitrage rules, you know, that you can't borrow money and then save it. You would have to either, as Mr. Robbie pointed out, we'd either have to use it to offset an overrun in a current project, or apply that and lessen borrowing at a future year. It's like we can't just take the savings and put it in the bank.
I want to add on a little bit to what Mr. Robbie said, if I could. Option E, the purpose of that is to give the council flexibility, recognizing that you've already given us direction that you wanted to limit borrowing. So that was the primary motivation, because Mr. Robbie and I, as we suggested option C, was going against KL, going against the Traffic Review Advisory Board, and going against the Plan Commission. So it's not that we're trying to make them angry. I think they were taking a long-term visionary approach to it, but financially speaking, that's going to be difficult. The idea behind this additionally is what Ms. Larson and I have talked about. Number one, a lot of this is going to be based on what growth happens in that corridor. What does that TIF district produce? And the initial TIF does not assume that extra $4 million, but we are assuming 5.2 to 5.7 million for Sawyer Street. And Councilmember Pansky asked about Sawyer Street. The reality is we're going to recommend something for Sawyer Street, but it's not going to be implemented for 5 to 7 years, because we need to make the TIF generate enough money. And with all due respect to this council, in 8 years there's going to be a different council, and that council will ultimately make that decision. The other idea behind option E is we want to be able to give the landowners in that area some understanding of what we're looking at long-term. I know Mr. Hoopman's here, he's very interested in this, because if we're going to do option C, whether it's now or later on down the road, we really need to get that right-of-way planned out now so that we're not digging up parking lots and buying buildings that we could have avoided in long ago. So the idea behind option E is just to plan for the future, just not implement it so quickly until we get the money. So that's the purpose of option E, is to really give a future council the ability to make that decision. Maybe they decide they want to widen Westfield or Oshkosh Avenue before they do Sawyer. Ultimately, you all know that future council will make that decision. You're just going to help make it a little easier for that council in a few years.
Another thing, by doing option C with the borrowing, that'll still keep us at the 70%, correct? If not under, or?
Yeah, that extra 3.2 million, we've anticipated this question. We are at about 66%. This will get us up to about 68%, so we would stay under our 70% threshold. Fortunately, we did real well on the valuation side, which has helped really get our valuation down there, along with the council-imposed cap of $11.4 million. We're still able to do that, even with everything that we've done so far. That 940, we haven't had to cut into that 11.4 million. Is that correct, James? You and Trina were working on that, right?
I think there was a little bit of that 900 came from the 11.4.
Yeah, so we're okay on a borrowing standpoint. If the council decided they wanted to go to 3.2, you're going to be at about 68%.
The other question is, I think this becomes an issue of vision for the city. What do we want people to experience as they enter the city? And we've heard a lot of complaints that students and their parents only see the university. They don't have a very good image of the city because they never get beyond the campus. But I think this is an issue of vision for the city of Oshkosh. Mark, you came from Grand Chute, and I've heard the comment that the planning around the Foxborough Mall and with College Avenue in Wisconsin was so poorly done. That's why it's such a horrible mess with traffic. It was. They never thought of the future. They never thought the Foxborough Mall would take off like that. They never thought of everything between 41 and going to the airport, how that area has grown. So this is why that's why the woman hit me too. But it was never well planned out because they didn't look to the future. There's no vision. Let's just continue College Avenue from downtown out. Is that a fairly true statement?
That was a question I was not anticipating, but however, I was doing the math while you were doing it. Grand Chute probably redid Casa Loma Drive 3 times in 15 years. And I think that goes to your point.
And I was just up there driving around Fox Crossing. There's a new Secura building going up that is enormous. The residential is just spreading very fast. So I think we have to, what is the vision going into the future? By that I mean 25 or 50 years. And development could happen a lot faster than we anticipate. And I think it's going to happen faster. It happened faster in Grand Chute. And look at the mess they have with Wisconsin and College Avenue. Deputy Mayor Herman.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Peck. I think we should look at option B initially because it stays within our TIF plans, and that's where the funding's going to come from. As I said at the last council meeting, they didn't support a lot of assessments to citizens who didn't ask for it, so I'm not a favor of that. If we can stay under our 70%, I can see some borrowing. So, combination B and C, E option would be okay, but I think I'll use what staff is constantly hammering in our heads is we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what's going to happen out there other than the development. So why go outside the TIF policy or the money that we anticipate that the TIF's going to make in 5 to 7 years from now? If we need to do more, the options are still there. So I guess option B would be mine initially, which would work very well. And if down the line we need to look at combining B and C, we got time for that. But we have to get those TIFs up and running and get them self-sufficient. We have too many underperforming TIFs now. We don't need any more.
Councilman Peck.
Just one quick question. Option E. Now, I only want to I only want to go with doing the work that we need to do now. But option E, does that, is all we would be approving would be the B, the 940 right now, is because I think as it was said earlier, we need to have the planning in there so that anyone who is coming in there to look at expanding or locating there, they understand that, and again, plans may change, but at this time, they at least understand that at some point, this street is gonna go this way, and so therefore, you're not gonna be able to locate, and then it would also help the planning department, correct?
The intention, as we put option E together, was, implement option B right now, but get the right-of-way to long-term implement option C, so that we did not have to, acquire at a much higher cost and potentially, have to tear up parking lots or buildings or other things. But, the intention with E is, B is what gets implemented now, but the additional right-of-way necessary to do C at some point in time in the future would be reserved at this time.
But C may actually, based on how things go, may actually change, correct? So we may acquire right-of-way that we think we need now, but at some future point, something may change. Instead of going here, we're gonna go here.
The right-of-way there is so tight, I don't think there's any bad risk in acquiring more right-of-way as the opportunity presents itself. And I think as this area develops, it behooves us to get that right-of-way and plan for it now.
And what is the cost of acquiring that right-of-way? Do we know what that is?
Typically, our goal is to look at ways we can acquire it in some type of swap and avoid the cost of right-of-way. We've got some property on the backside of the golf course that we may be able to use. It will be between the back lot of the current parcels, the private parcels, and where some ponds may go, and we can build ponds in such a way that they back up to wherever the property line goes, ends up at the end. So the whole idea is we plan ahead for that, so we don't have to incur those costs.
Well, I think it's the right way to go is E, so we have some planning going forward, rather than when the time comes, we're in the Appleton type situation where you've got nowhere to go.
Well, so I understand, will option E, which is a combination of B and C, give us the median, which could become a boulevard for the gateway?
Long-term, but not in the short term.
You would preserve the right-of-way to be able to build the boulevard at such point in time you decide that the finances are available, but in the interim, we would simply have the turn lanes developed at the intersection, and the additional green space, terrace, whatever you want to call it at this point in time, would be available for any widening in the future.
At the end of the day, which is going to cost us the more? All is said and done.
Anytime you wait for a project, inflation's going to add up. I think we can avoid the cost on the right-of-way by going with option E, because we'll take care of that issue now. But as any project happens, you wait a few more years and the costs go up. And that's what we'll have, as will, I'm not sure how much inflation factor we built in for Sawyer, if we did it, or is that just current dollars?
That was current year dollars.
So even Sawyer Street's current year dollars. So we're gonna have to rely on what happens with the success of the TIF, and what priorities are. As priorities change, we could change our minds in a few years. But the cost will go up. There's absolutely no question the cost will go up in future years.
Costs are gonna go up anyway, even if we do go with option E. That doesn't change.
With option.
With option E, those costs still go up. It's not like we're doing that future part now, so it doesn't
Right.
change the fact that.
Correct.
You avoid some of the inflation of the right-of-way costs as the corridor develops and goes forward, that right-of-way will become of higher value, the more developed it is and the higher demand. So if we can acquire that right-of-way now in a swap situation, we will be ahead on those dollars.
Councilman Peck.
So then what is the direction we are looking for? We have all right, wait, the resolution is not on the floor yet, correct?
Correct. You would need a motion and a second to bring it on the floor, and then we would want a motion to fill in that, in the now therefore be resolved paragraph, to proceed with
Okay.
option,
All right.
and we need to know which one.
Then I would move,
Well, first we've got to open up the public. Correct?
We have nobody registered.
Okay.
all right, then I would move for approval of 18116.
We need a second.
Second.
And then I would move to amend the now therefore be it resolved paragraph to insert with option E as identified in attached Exhibit A.
Second.
Any more discussion? Would you please take the roll?
Krause?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Piansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next, we have council.
Now we'll take the vote on the resolution as amended.
Would you please take the roll?
Krause?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Piansky?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, now it's council discussion, direction, city manager, and future agenda items. First is workshop demonstration, new city website. Mr. Roloff, would you like to fill in the blanks?
Yeah, this is not a formal workshop, but we want to do a demonstration on what changes we've been making with the website to give you an opportunity to look at it, to, ask questions. It's totally optional. The idea is we would just give you about a half hour to take a look at it and give us your thoughts. Not unlike what we did when we had the display for the citizen registration for citizens. We don't have a date set. Wanted to leave it open. We do not have a workshop at either of the next 2 meetings. So we could do it at any workshop or at any council meeting. And again, if you can't make it for whatever reason, that would be okay. We'd be happy to do a demonstration if you make an appointment with us. So just looking for some direction if there's a date that you would like to do that, to take a look.
All right, Mr. Peck, you have capital projects and estimating and bidding.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking
wait.
for a date.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I am, or we can leave it TBD, but that's okay. Any preference? I mean, next meeting?
I'm good with either one, either of the March meetings.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We'll shoot for the March meeting unless something comes
13th?
up. 3/13.
Just the one that
Thank
you mentioned you're not going to be at. So.
Now, that's 3/27, that's spring break, so I apologize, but
You won't want it on that one.
I want to be here for it,
Right, so
absolutely.
there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Herman.
There's the options.
Very good, thank you.
You're up.
Okay. Based on discussion the past several weeks, I discussed something with Mr. Roloff. I think it would be a good idea to put a workshop on related to estimating and bidding of capital projects. I appreciate the gentleman's input. I too served on the Winnebago County Board for a while, so you have a rather unique perspective, and you're on, like you said, on both sides. But what I suggest is that we do that we have a workshop related to how estimates are put together, how projects are basically designed and everything. And to do that, I would suggest possibly bringing in, James, I know you guys are really good at it, but just so we kind of have everything, possibly maybe if we could get somebody from the American Institute of, or not, I don't know the,
Like
Mr. Roloff, you and I.
Yeah, American Society for Civil Engineers,
Yeah.
American Public Works Association. Ms. Larson has actually taken a look at what some of the UW programs that have been done for programs on capital improvements for elected officials, and looking to see if we can identify somebody who could come in and do something like this.
Yeah. But I think it would be a very beneficial educational for us. Yes, we're all concerned about the overruns and this, but it's a very complicated process, and I think if we had a better understanding of it, we may have a better understanding of what happens and why things are planned the way they are, and then the ramifications of that. So if we could get that scheduled in the near future, it would be appreciated.
I'll have to do a little bit of research to find somebody. I don't know of any short presentations right now, but certainly, as Mark mentioned, Finance Director Larson had an idea, but that particular, she had a flyer for a training course, but it was like a 2-day training course. I mean, that's not going to fit in a workshop scenario. So I'll have to do a little bit of research to find somebody, or I may have to work with somebody to have them modify some things they already have.
The Cliff Notes version.
Yes.
Not the engineered version.
Deputy Mayor Herman.
To that point, James, maybe it's as simple as, how do you guys put your bids together? When you do a street, you're going to do, what's the assessment process? You do the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, the sidewalks. You estimate the widths, those types of things. So then you start formulating the project, and then you move it forward with what are you looking for in bids, and what type of piping and things that put it all together, that it all comes together in a completed project. I think as much as what I'm hearing Mr. Peck say is just kind of the process of what you guys all do to put a project together and get it to the point to put it out to bid, so that companies like Dorner or PTS out of Green Bay, Myron, how they go about, we use the state bidding process, or what do we use to get those companies to then bid what you are looking for to complete that project? This is what I'm thinking would be a nice, way of going about it. We have engineers. We have a stormwater engineer, we have we got a whole bunch of them. I don't know all their titles.
Yeah, I think what we'd do is find somebody, we'd develop what we anticipate would be the scope of that, and explain to you, this is where we think we're going to be going with it, but without doing.
Anatomy of a bid process.
Yeah, 34 years ago, I took a great class. We called it baby engineering, because it was engineering for future city managers, and it was a great class. Of course, that, by my calculation, my professor would be about 100 right now, but it was a great class, but it was a whole semester. And the classes that even Trina identified were a day or two, so we want to find something that can truncate
Condense
it.
in 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, something like an hour or something like that. So, but once we find something, we'll come back to you.
Councilperson Peck.
And then just one last thing is the ramifications of the bidding process, that what happens should we put a bid out for certain quantities, and then we don't, and then the project does not use those quantities, or where you may overestimate, because again, people put bids in based on things, and that's what they base their costs on. And that if we don't live up to our end, that there are some types of liquidated damages in that, and how that also can affect a project as well.
Okay.
Very good.
All right, Deputy Mayor Herman, you would like to talk about dark stores?
Yeah, just
that's
just real briefly. Last week, 2 weeks ago, actually, several of us who are on the lobby team for the League of Municipalities were asked to lobby our legislators to approve the dark store legislation, and I guess there were some issues with it, and it didn't go through. So Mr. Roloff might have an update of where we're at with the dark store controversy that's hurt us.
Yeah, in spite of, I believe Deputy Mayor Herman and Mayor Cummings both contacted the governor's office at the behest of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, it pretty much got stopped in the assembly. Now, there was some talk that it might get resurrected, and a representative out of the Wapaka County had tried to bring it back in. Some of the provisions that were added to it were so distasteful. You remember, we've been talking generically about dark store, but if you recall, dark store was one part of it, and then the Walgreens decision was in that same vein, but it was still much different. It was affecting property assessments. The proposal was to essentially codify Walgreens for keeps, but they give up the dark store issue. And quite frankly, the league didn't find that acceptable. Representative Brooks, who had really been carrying that water on it, found it unacceptable. Representative Hintz, and he's the minority leader right now, he couldn't find it acceptable. So even though it was dangled in front of us for just and only the dark store, the trade-off with that Walgreens decision would have been devastating to us. And so ultimately, it didn't have enough votes to get through the assembly, which was probably a good thing, even though somebody could say, well, you didn't accept the dark store compromise. That was no compromise. None of the parties who were advocating on our behalf took that deal. It's likely to wait until the next legislative session. I hate to tell you that, but I would love to be wrong about that, and if I am, I'll be notifying you soon. But I think it's been something that
In the short term, what's the impact going to be to the city, probably?
In the short term, I fear that you are still going to see challenges to assessments, and those are really more along the Walgreens case than the dark store, which is why I think Representative Brooks and Representative Hintz appropriately didn't take the deal, because the challenges, and we really can't even fight them that much anymore because they're all consistent with the Walgreens decision, and communities have to roll over until the state legislature fixes this problem. And people talk about it be a tax break for businesses or something like that. One of our staff members lives in the Manawa area, and an equivalent on the industrial side, they got an assessment reduced on an industrial property, and it really encapsulates the whole issue, because we've done projections on what it could mean for us. In the city of Manawa, every residence went up about $300 to $400 based on that item alone. So that takes, when you take small Manawa and then you take what the logical conclusion of this is, that's what it would mean. So they may, it's going to be a tax increase for businesses. They're trying to get tax decreases at residents' expenses, and we got to keep telling that story. And I appreciate Mr. Herman put it on the agenda, because we cannot let this cannot let up. Thank you.
Well, another example was up in the Upper Peninsula, and I know it was Iron Mountain or one of the iron cities up there. The effect was they had to close their library. They could not afford to keep a library open because of this. And I think it was either a Lowe's or one of the do-it-yourself stores. So it's serious to every homeowner, every small business owner in this, not only this state, but the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is now a time for citizens to make statements to the council. Pam, has anyone registered to speak?
I have no one registered.
I know everyone out there. All right. Every year the fire department does a food and toy drive in December. I participate. I think every council member has ridden along with the firemen. Last year was bitterly cold. They had to cancel a couple of nights, but I just want to kind of give some results as to the 2017 food drive. This was just 5 nights, but they worked with the Communities Program students from Oshkosh North High School. The Salvation Army is involved, and they distribute the food and toys to families throughout the area. But last December, they received 4,156,000 pounds of food, 2,806 toys, and $2,876 in cash. So it's, thank you to the fire department, the students from Oshkosh North Communities Program, Salvation Army, but especially the citizens of Oshkosh. And, for those that have gone with them, and there are people outside with their cans of food, their toys, just waiting for the fire department, so.
And it was brutally cold during that, as I recall.
That was 2016, they had to cancel 2 nights, it was so cold. But this year, the weather's pretty decent, but it's just a great event, and the money goes for scholarships. So we have another 10 months before we can do it again. Again, the firefighters do a lot of good programs, and the police department too in the city, so. Mr. Roloff, it is now your turn to take over.
Thank you. Just a reminder, State of the City, March 19th, doors open at 6, presentation starts at 6:30. Staff's going to be going over a preliminary script for me tomorrow, so you'll be contacted very shortly about the awards program and how you can assist us on that. And Mayor, I think you'll be contacted as well for your introductory part of that as well. A couple memos in your agenda packet. One is for Carroll's and Associates associated with the locker room renovation project over at the police department. Some cooperative purchase of traffic signal cameras for the Oregon Street project, which council approved the major part of that contract earlier this evening. Similarly, our capital improvements program, we do materials testing over the course of the entire construction season, and firm PSI was the one who received that contract. Oshkosh Corp update, there's just a memo in your packet. Ms. Lawrenson and her legal team are working on the final touches on the agreement. We anticipate it'll be on the agenda on March 13th, and our goal will be to get it to you as soon as we get a final document that we can present to you. The idea is to give it to you as soon as in advance as possible, so that if you have questions, you can contact Ms. Lawrenson. And then annually, by our code, the city manager is required to produce a report about the vendors receiving over $300,000. This dates back to 2012. Prior to that, the city manager had authority to approve any and all professional services contracts up to an unlimited amount, and I felt very uncomfortable about that. And even though we have awkward discussions sometimes on contracts, we're supposed to have those awkward discussions, and it's okay. And so even though at the risk of doing it, it's 8:30, I may be lucky, but you still got a lot of contracts here, and I think it's appropriate for you to have that. And if you have any questions, obviously, the big ones are typically capital projects. There's some here that are really more pass-throughs, like depository trusts for debt service payments. Most of the big ones, if it says contractor, it's typically bid out. Vendors are typically those that are a combination of either contracts that council's approved or a series of contracts such as CH2M Hill, AECom, folks like those that we have multiple contracts over the course of the entire year. Happy to answer any questions. I hadn't gotten any up to today's meeting. Anytime you can certainly ask these questions if you have any questions about these. These are all, that's money that's gone out the door already, so we can certainly answer any questions you might have.
Councilperson Pansky, I apologize, I kind of blacked you out by mistake.
Oh, that's okay. It was actually going back to item 38.
Okay.
With the locker room renovations.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have an update on the fence project? I thought that was in there somewhere, and I see no fence, and there hasn't been any information on it, so I was just wondering if we had an update on that.
James seems anxious to want to talk about it, so I'm going to let him.
We had actually put together plans and specs last year and bid a project out. We have received no bids, so we're in the process of working with the purchasing division to simplify the documents and also to do a little bit more look at, okay, how can we open up the timelines? Because some of the things we had heard from some of the plan holders was, the timelines were just a little too tight for what it took us to get the materials and get the project done. So we had to kind of go back and reevaluate some of the assumptions that we put into that contract. So we are working with purchasing right now to get that done and get it back out for bid, because we did not receive any the first time around.
Very good. Thank you for the update.
Councilperson Palmieri.
I just had a question on the list of vendors receiving over $300,000. Now, in here we say any contract over $75,000 now requires council approval. But it seems like, in the last couple of meetings, at least that I recall, that there are a number of those that have exceeded that, and there was some kind of language to the effect that you could authorize that if they were a special type of provider, or am I getting confused?
There are provisions for us with state contracts, such as purchase of
Yeah.
buses or squad cars. So that allows the city to essentially piggyback on something that has already been bid out competitively.
I'm thinking more along the lines, not of the state contract, or that, you know, that where it benefits us, but in the situation where, was it waste management, or the land, the contaminated soil disposal, for example, because it was such a specialized nature.
They're typically only, there's only one real contaminated waste contractor in this area, so that's one of those where the exception can apply.
Yep.
But we do negotiate those rates typically, and it's much less expensive than going to the county landfill, even for regular waste. And with some of our projects, we've had pretty good volume on these things, so we get a good volume discount.
Well, I think the language was something along the lines of, we didn't need to send it out for competitive bid, but I guess my question is, as it relates to this right here, any contract over 75,000 now requires council approval. So in that situation, even though it wouldn't necessarily need to go out for competitive bidding, it was still required because we approved it.
Yeah, didn't we?
And I-
Yeah, it was a resolution.
Yep, exactly. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. There
And
were
you see
some
that
folks
down-
asking questions about that, so.
The example that you use is about 80% of the way down Waste Management of Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's the accumulation of all those dumps, for lack of a better term. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, I'll ask for an adjournment. Or
So moved.
motion to adjourn, a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. This whole sponsorship with this quality of,